Hey guys, so welcome back. Today, I said that we would be going over some of the actual on-site tests that some of those conservative YouTube reporters went out and conducted themselves. They stayed up really late at night and they went to go simulate the events. Now, what they're trying to do is stress test the very key elements that bookend the black hole in our timeline, and the two key elements that really give Mr. A the alibi and set up the possibility that SJM just walked into the river to his death. So of course we're talking about 3:31 to 3:32 a.m., the two little black blobs that just plops over to the riverside. Were those actually people? That's what they wanted to go test, to see if they did the same exact thing. Did they look like two little blobs? Or were they just, let's say, cats or something just running around on the grass? So that was one test. Then the other test was, because, we obviously now know we can't trust Hot Daddy's show to do their test and simulation of whether we could trust the fisherman's account. So they went as another skeptical audiovisual team to try to see whether they can simulate the conditions of that evening and see if 80 meters away they could see somebody walk into the river and say, oh my god, how refreshing this is, and splash around a little bit. And if somebody was 80 meters away fishing for eel, can be like, oh, I guess it's just another person enjoying the Han River, a little drunk and just going for a swim and then hopping back out, but we didn't see them hop back out, so I guess it was that person who was missing and then just died. Okay, yeah, it's probably him. So today we're going to just open one of these doors. We're going to focus on the 3:31 to 3:32 because I think what that does is really bust witness number one. I think what we really have done as citizen journalists, bust open witness number one, we got him caught and busted. So if you'd like to get a refresher, look at the 3-part series on the critical CCTV images of the night in question, and you can become an expert on how to determine which little blobs are people, which little blobs are just lights, and which blobs are the critical clues to determine what is going on during this time where we don't have reliable eyewitnesses and accurate, clear CCTV footage. So we're going to go back to 3:30 a.m. and we're just going to look at a little bit of what is happening on the grassy knoll before that time period where we believe that two tiny black blobs in the span of about 10 seconds send chills down our spine. Yeah, literally, like these two little whoop whoop. It's chilling. Essentially what this does, it answers, how did SJM get from the grassy knoll to the water? Because still to this day, the police do not have an answer. Nobody officially has an answer, but we do, from this CCTV hypothesis, have the answer that at 3:31 and right at the crossing to 3:32, that is when SJM seems to have flown over the embankment either by falling or being pushed. And a second person, most likely Mr. A, following right behind to see what was going on. Okay, so now you can see that was the actual CCTV footage. Now we're going to take a look at the setup. So this was an elaborate day. They said that they were going to go to the park, and so they had a bunch of their fans show up, and they assigned the role of SJM to the Harry Potter looking reporter over there. And the founder of the channel, the older guy, I don't know why, but he is now Mr. A, right? Because he's wearing the Letterman jacket. Yeah. So the Harry Potter reporter, doing great. He's got a lot of spunk. He has plants in his room that he claims that his mother grows. He gives advice on where he could get the cheapest, like, Propecia hair loss, medication in Seoul from the pharmacies. Very well spoken. He's also got lots of attitude. So he plays the role of SJM. And also, I don't know where he got that shirt. He got the SJM shirt, so he is ready for this. But he still did say that, I'm not a stuntman. I am just, a YouTube reporter. I am not a stuntman. So I guess he's basically trying to say, like, please don't hurt me. So they set up all of these air mattresses to brace his fall. So you could see them doing the setup, and they're also doing the camera setup. So they are installing a camera right next to the actual CCTV that captured the original footage. So playing the part of Mr. A, the owner of the channel, Mr. Shin, I don't know why he's got this crazy angry face on his own channel. This is the stereotype that I have in my mind of the far right winger who talks about Korean politics on YouTube, but this other cartoon is the more general vibe that I actually get from him. Seems very reasonable, kind of like a nice guy, very rational, very mellow, though I do have to question sometimes the company that he brings into the studio as guests in terms of, like, the politicians, not his employees. They also seem very, like, great people throughout this whole investigation. They have been extremely at the forefront of really trying to continue to bring, like, an evidence research-based questioning of what the official word is out there, and to match that with this public suspicion that something about this is just not right. Okay, so maybe he could have used the other profile energy a little bit more during this test, because they had to do it 19 times. And if he did indeed get pushed, he needed a little bit more attitude and energy. So they did try it where, like, they just fell and they didn't get that speed. Because if you notice from that blob, the way that it moved across the screen from left to right, it was like a fast projectile movement. So at first they were like, okay, maybe it's just a simple fall. They didn't get the speed. Then they tried running, because according to the testimony, the only thing during the 8-hour blackout from 11:14 p.m. of Mr. A was that he remembered, oh, my friend, he fell down an embankment, and I had to drag him up. And that's when my shoes got all messed up and my clothes got all dirty, and it was really hard. It required a lot of effort, and then I can't remember anything else. So at that moment, we believe that that's when if he claimed that he kind of ran and fell, so they tried to run and fall, but there was not enough space for a running motion. The only space, and to get that kind of projectile movement, they said the only way you can get that kind of projectile movement and do a running motion is if you're kind of like doing that track and field thing and you're like bracing for the start of the gunshot running, and you go like a sprint, which of course that's not like what he meant. So running was out of the question. So obviously now they were in the push territory. Hand push or a kick push. So they tried these different scenarios, 19 times, right? And, they were like doing like a little soft push, they were being like gentle because, of course, the Harry Potter reporter's like, I am just a reporter. I'm not a stuntman. And so they were like softly pushing. And, some of those ajumas that came to watch they were like, they're on the side of this channel. They're fans of this channel, but they were just like, you gotta kick him. You gotta kick him hard. You gotta just like kick him out down the hill. And the Harry Potter reporter is like, what? I'm just a reporter. I'm not a stunt man. But you gotta watch out for some of these Ajummas, man. I mean, there are some serious business. So they were pushing harder. So they got that other reporter dude, the one that gets frequent nosebleeds and just like stuffs up Kleenex and just goes out and reports anyway in the studio. And so he started pushing harder. And on the 14th try, they said they got a very, very, very close match. So that's what you see. Very close match. So there's the original. And then there is their simulation. Very close. And they were only able to get the simulation by being pushed. Now, they also wanted to make a very clear indication that they had set up 3 air mattresses to brace the fall. And then, after they were done with the blob testing, they removed the mattresses and to try and gave us a view of what it would be like actually just to fall there without air mattresses, obviously, and how sharp of a drop it was, and how that actually could explain the tear on the shirt of SJM, not necessarily being like in the water and getting it ripped. Like if you notice, like the injuries on the head, the injury on the cheek, the injury on the shirt, the blood on the clothes, they're all saying like, oh, it could just be like, like him rubbing against the rocks in the water. It's probably that. And they were kind of eliminating the possibility that he would have gotten injured on land first and then had those injuries. So some of you were asking in the comments, what about the autopsy? And in the beginning, the reports were really slanted in favor of like, oh, these little cuts, they weren't life-threatening at all. And it was somewhat true in the sense that the injuries weren't large. Like if you got those injuries, if anybody got those injuries, it wouldn't be big enough to kill anybody. But SJM's father even said that he could see bone. So it wouldn't be something like if you got those cuts, like you'd be like, oh, I'm just going to put a Band-Aid on this and let's go to the restaurant. No, you would have to still go to the hospital because you can see bone. So most likely he was pushed and he probably fell somewhat, or maybe even tumbled, had some injury on his cheek, 2 gashes on the head, probably like after he maybe like hit his head back on some rocks, and then ripped some clothes. So that is definitely a possibility of how he got from the grassy knoll to the riverbank. Now what we have new, the reason why we're continuing on with this test and adding some new CCTV footage analysis that we haven't shown you before, is that we're really going to bust open witness number 1. And witness number 1 is a team. It's 2 people. We call it witness number 1, but it's a witness number 1 group. It's 2 people. It's like a couple, apparently. So witness number 1. So witness number 1, we're saying like might be fake. Totally fake, because they did not show up in the picture at 3:38 a.m. when they claimed that they had seen Mr. A and SJM on the picnic area. They were supposed to be there looking at both of them. The picture only showed Mr. A on the phone. But how do we know that Mr. A came back? You know, we said like these two blobs went over. Like, do we have like CCTV evidence showing a blob coming back out? Yes, we do. So, around 3:35, so about 3 minutes of staying down there, only one blob emerges from the riverbank and goes back up and sort of wanders around a bit, and then, goes to that area where we see the photo being taken. Mr. A is on the phone, probably freaking out. And of course, remember, he never mentioned that phone call during his testimony. Oh, of course, he was blacked out. Yeah, he was blacked out. So he didn't remember anything. So that's why, of course, he probably didn't mention the phone call. However, when asked about that phone call, the mother, apparently, in that questioning, freaked out. It was like, they said that she kind of had like some sort of like post-traumatic stress kind of thing going on. It sounded like probably that was when she heard the traumatic news. Like something had happened to SJM that was really, really bad. And then they said like she had like this click. Like, then she was just like, no, we're gonna do, like, basically probably like the mama bear activation came on and was just like, nope, we're gonna fight this, we're gonna win. Alright, so 3:35 a.m., only one emerged. 3:37, we have the phone call by Mr. A to his parents. So obviously it's not a cat. It has to be the size of a human to get that blob. It has to be a push to get that speed. And 2 blobs went over, and only 1 blob came out. This seriously throws a wrench in the alibi of Mr. A at the 3:37 a.m. mark, because it was extremely important to establish that at 3:37, SJM was also on the picnic mat, because that's when SJM said that he fell asleep, right? Because he couldn't remember anything from falling asleep, but somehow like he fell asleep on the picnic mat, but then woke up like on the riverside on the embankment. So what, does he sleepwalk or something? So in any case, like for his story to work out, he had to have seen him alive before he fell asleep, and then he woke up and didn't see him. But if he fell asleep without seeing him, that's a problem. So they needed a witness to say like, oh yeah, I saw them about 3:37, and yeah, they were there. And that's when Mr. A said, oh, I fell asleep too. That throws a serious wrench in this, because not only do we have photo evidence that shows that witness number 1 was not there and SJM was not there, we also have CCTV footage now that indicates that SJM was not there. So we have now 2 pieces of solid evidence that goes against hearsay, like somebody's word. Okay, so what could have happened, because this is also in a cover-up situation where you have authorities colluding in this type of case, where I've seen before, is when you can actually have a real witness, but sort of make a mistake in the timeline. So we do have a group that looks like they were right in the place for witness number 1. They were there from 1 a.m. to 2:47. Remember, witness number 1 group on paper said that they were there from 1 a.m. to 3:47. So it could have been a situation where they either lied, they just said 1 to 3:47, or they could have just been honestly mistaken and said 347, or they could have said 247 and the authorities could have just changed it, or they could have been pressured or confused and been like, no, are you sure it was 240, I think you were probably there for now, because that's happened before. So it looks like from this CCTV footage, it's very, very consistent with the tracking of, if you just turn back the clock an hour of like, when did you see these people? Like, did you see them at like 2 instead of 3:27? Did you see them both on the mat at 2:27? And remember from the keeled over picture, 2:18, they were both there. Remember, Mr. A was really trying to wake up SJM, like slapping him and stuff like that. So he could have woken up by that point. He could have been sitting up. SJM could have been sitting up by close to 2:30. And witness group 1 could have been telling the truth, saying like, yeah, we saw them sitting up. But instead of 3:37, it could have been 2:37. See what I mean? They could be real, they could be telling the truth, but they're an hour off. And whether they did that as a mistake or whether the mistake was done for them after, we don't know. So now we're beginning to see that the critical moments where there is clear testimony from either witnesses and from Mr. A seem to be actually those critical points where maybe something bad had happened. And that is the area to really keep your eye on and double check. Stress test. So we're going to stress test witness number 1. I think that is a good investment. Stress test witness number 1. Stress test the fisherman. I think that is also a great investment because between 3:37 and 4:27 or 4:40, that is probably when the unmentionable happened. Just to give an update on how SJM's father is doing, he made another blog entry, and this time it was a little bit more heartfelt. He said that he really this time broke down in tears, and I know sometimes I was saying like, maybe this guy didn't have any emotions, but I guess he does have, some emotions. So he said that, on his way home from work, so he's still working throughout all of this craziness, he kind of broke down, in sadness when it started to rain. And he said he felt betrayed by some people that he didn't expect. And, in these kind of situations, you really do see who is there for you and who is not. And it's usually not the people you expect. And he wanted to make a point, though. He really good at this, though, even though he's sad. He said that, and he's educating us, because what we think is logical and then what is the way it works in the legal system, it's always different. So some people are asking like, well, if this is a case where the parents were helping out in destroying evidence and assisting a crime, well, isn't it bad for them? And he said like, look, I've checked this out, I've been advised, and there is nothing that would stick onto the parents. The parents can do anything to help their child in this situation. Really? So what law is this? So again, that conservative YouTube channel had some legal analysis, and what they found out was they looked up the Criminal Code 155. So Clause 1 says, well, there is some punishment if you get involved in the investigation of another person and you tamper with evidence, you destroy evidence, like you mess things up. The penalty can be 5 years in jail or less, or 7 million won fine, which is less than $7,000. Right? So to them, it's nothing. However, Clause 4 says that, but if somebody who lives with you and is your close family messes with the investigation, we're gonna just give that a pass. Like, that is okay. Like, there's no punishment. We can say, this is what happens a lot in these legalese. You can get charged and convicted. Like, the court can say, you tampered with evidence, you're a bad person. But, like, you don't have to pay anything. Boom, done. And that's just the way the law worked. And so if you're just curious, that was set in 1995. Shyam's father wanted us to know this, that's just like a very unfair situation, and may, in this kind of situation, really encourage this kind of behavior from parents. But some of you might be like, why would you even have something crazy like this? Well, on the other hand, when you kind of want to look at it from a different perspective, why you are thankful that this kind of a law is there, is you have to also consider where Korea has come from and where many countries have come from, where it's so unfair, where if you are identified as a troublemaker, the authorities can easily just accuse you of something and say, like, yeah, the rest of your family is probably helping you, and like, it's like they're meddling in the evidence, and we're just gonna lock them all up. Let's kind of get rid of the whole family. And so, like, your enemies, your rivals, people that are jealous of you, they can just eliminate entire families. And so these kind of laws actually can really serve as like a stopgap measure and protect the rights of other people. Like, you don't want to go to like jail because like your sister's out there doing something, standing up for something, but you don't want to also be accused of things. But at the same time, see how, like, if people just stop pissing in the pool, some of these laws can work well for all of us. We could all have nice things, but like, each of these laws can be used for the benefit of the bad. So he's also pointing out that is the situation he's under, and now I'm just realizing he's probably really mad at the parents, and he's probably like, well, what can we do about the parents? And then he probably got a very unfortunate answer that not much, because the law is really on the side of a parent who does illegal things to protect their child. So that's the latest update on the experiment that they did to prove that those blobs had to have come from two people, one of whom was pushed or kicked. And next time we'll go over some of the stress testing of the fisherman's testimony. All right, guys, we'll see you again. Bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.